Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome everyone into Garden of Doom, and this week we're welcoming in author Meg Hafdahl, and she has written a whole lot of books and she's got stuff coming out as well, and we're going to talk about all of that. So let me give you a little bit of her background. She's a horror and suspense author. She's the creator of numerous stories and books. Her fiction has appeared in anthologies such as Eve's Requiem, Tales of Women, Mystery, and Horror, and Eclectically Criminal, which, I mean, that's fabulous right there. Her work has been produced for audio by the Wicked Library and The Lift. That sounds menacing when you say The Lift like that. And she is the author of 2 popular short story collections, including Twisted Reveries, 13 Tales of the Macabre. Meg is also the author of 2 novels, Daughter of Darkness and Her Dark Inheritance, called An Intricate Tale of Betrayal, Murder, and Small-Town Intrigue by Horror Addicts, and, quote, Every Bit as Page-Turning as Any King Novel, end quote, by RW Magazine. Meg is also the co-host of a podcast called Horror Rewind, and the co-author of The Science of Monsters, so we're obviously going to talk about that, The Science of Women in Horror, The Science of Stephen King, we're definitely talking about that, and the upcoming Science of Serial Killers. She lives in Minnesota. I'm not going to give you the town. She can talk about that. She also wrote The Science of Agatha Christie and The Science of Alfred Hitchcock. So obviously a prolific writer in her own right. Welcome into the Garden of Doom, Meg Hafdahl. How are you?
Thank you. I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. It's always great to have accomplished authors on here, and then also ones that are involved in horror and scary stuff, which is terrific. And I'm hoping today to focus a little bit on the scary stuff, but I don't want to lose any focus on you. I want the audience to get to know you a little bit more. So beyond the bio, which was pre-printed probably by your publicist and whatnot, what do you want the world to know about you?
Sure. Well, yep. I live in Minnesota. I've got my 2 pugs on my lap right now. So yes, I'm a very devoted pug mother. And yes, I have 2 teenage boys as well. And
let's talk about monsters.
Talk about monsters. And I also podcast, as you mentioned, with my best friend, and we talk horror movies. So horror has been a huge part of my life since I was a kid. It was just something that I naturally, a lot of people ask me why horror. And I probably don't have a great answer. A lot of people ask me that too, I think because I'm a woman, and also because I'm a very happy-go-lucky person, and I smile a lot, and I'm nice, and people are like, really, you, horror?
Well, you know who else smiles a lot? The Joker. Yeah, you know who else? Pennywise. You know who else? The creature from Smile.
Exactly. And so I'm really just trying to lure you in.
Exactly.
So, I think it's, for me, I love stories about complicated characters who have the worst day of their lives, and we get to see them, sort of sink or swim, and see them, again, have this, worst day and see if they can vanquish the monster, either psychologically or real, right?
Obviously, there's the Hitchcock affinity.
Exactly. So I'll always love horror, and at the same time, I love all the I love literature too. I was a literature student, so I love all that stuff too. But I'm a horror girl through and through, and so I have the best job in the world. I get to talk about it and write about it, both in nonfiction and fiction.
What's your favorite horror movie?
I gotta go with Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. I gotta go with it.
No problem.
Even though I'm a huge Stephen King fan, I know he hates it. I gotta go with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's my favorite, but I saw The Shining before I knew he hated it, and I agree. I think it's a fabulous horror movie. Having read it, the book, much later, I read the book probably within the last 2 years. And I saw Dr. Sleep, and I loved it. And having read the book and seen Dr. Sleep, I do understand why he hates it. But if he could get out of his head on this one, I mean, it's an objectively fantastic movie, which does tell an encapsulated story. That's just, it's just not exactly his story. And I get all that. Anyway, but forget about me and my insights. What is your favorite horror book? And if it's The Shining, that would actually be appropriate because they are very different stories. But
right, that's tough. It's kind of a tie. I'm a huge Shirley Jackson fan, so I love how subtle she is. So We've Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, and I read the book Rebecca, which is a gothic. It's a little more on the gothic side than horror side, by Daphne du Maurier. And when I read that book, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. And also when I read Carrie, that was the first Stephen King book I read when I was the perfect age. I was about 13, I think. And obviously Carrie was, a character that I could relate to, which I don't know, maybe that's weird, but I could at that moment in my life. And so all those books were just at this perfect moment at my life, in my life at that moment. And so all those books led me to be a horror writer. So I guess I can't pick just one.
Okay.
All of them.
Okay, I accept that answer because the guests. This is a guest-led show, and this is not. Yeah, this is not 60 Minutes. We're not trying to get anyone into a corner here. All right, so let's talk about obviously there's one theme that persists, and that is, concentrating and focusing on women in horror, whether in the stories themselves or in history. And I don't want to give that short shrift, but I want to start with what I want to start with, even though it's guest-led. In this case, I'm going to take host privilege because I want to talk about the science of monsters. So, So tell me a little bit about the science of monsters. And I'll let you start with the monsters, of course, and then if you don't start with the monsters that I want to talk about, obviously I'm going to get into some of the monsters I want to talk about. But, I imagine that, we probably will start with the first, which is probably, Frankenstein, and then, because that is the, basically the science of man playing God, I suppose. So I don't know. But forget about my little nudging. Tell us about the science of monsters.
Right. So that's the first book. So all of my Science of Horror, which is kind of like what we call the series, all of those books I co-wrote with my best friend Kelly Florence. And basically how
Stop showing off that you have a best friend.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. And we still actually like each other after writing 8 books together.
Gross.
Anyway, so we kind of came up with a concept from the idea of that first of all, we're both not scientists. I come from a literature background. Kelly comes from a communication background and a theater background. I come from film studies. So we wanted to come from like this sort of non-esoteric background of 2 people learning about science, and not like we already know everything about science. We definitely don't.
Well, the internet tells me that 95% of the people out there are experts in all things science.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You would think so, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to be like, hey, we're learning along with you and we're figuring this out. So a big component of our books is that we interview people who are smarter than us about things. We interview doctors, we interview scientists, we even interview people that are like botanists, even people who are more your niche people like aura photographers, ghost hunters, people that you may not even call scientists necessarily, but people who are experts of their own field. And we get to learn so many awesome, interesting things. But I'm a history nerd, and learning about film history, about the history of the culture at the time. Like, for instance, you mentioned Frankenstein. And so, yeah, we go into, in the Science of Monsters, we go very far into, like, the universal monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula. And so, obviously, I'm a huge Mary Shelley fan. And we go into, what was it about the Industrial Revolution and the time that Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein? And we go into the resurrectionist movement of how doctors were having people get bodies. What's the opposite of bury? Why can't I
Exhume.
Exhume. Thank you. I swear I've written books.
Or grave robbing. Tomb raiding.
Yeah. Exhume bodies, and how we talk about the story, the very real story of Burke and Hare, these 2 men who ended up realizing it was actually a lot easier to just end up killing people than exhuming bodies. They were like, hey, why dig 6 feet to get bodies when we could just kill people and bring them to the doctors? Like, what? Why do all this work? And of course, they ended up killing the wrong people and getting caught.
Who are the right people to kill?
Yeah, well, it's funny, actually. We get into a lot of that too, because that is something that over time we've learned through serial killers have learned that if you kill sex workers, if you kill the unhoused, if you kill Jeffrey Dahmer learned if you kill gay people in the 80s in Milwaukee, you actually won't get caught for a long time. So there's actually Burke and Hare figured out if you kill the unhoused people in Ireland, or I think it was Scotland actually, for a long time you won't get caught. But then they killed a cute little boy, and then they got caught.
I imagine the Victorian UK, which I'm sure was in the UK then, it was a lot easier also, especially if you were of the noble classes, to kill someone that was of the lowest classes. I mean, you could probably just say they were trespassing. That was probably okay.
Right. It's like whatever.
Yeah.
So, so that's a concept that, in Science and Serial Killers we get into as well. And that often comes up in a lot of our books. But, so yeah, it's really fun and interesting to get into. I mean, maybe it's ironic that I'm saying fun and interesting when I'm talking about
No. This is the Garden of Doom. Don't worry. Don't.
It's horror.
Yeah.
But it really, it's so cliche, but truth really is stranger than fiction. And once you start digging deeper and deeper into the fascinating things that inspire, like, one thing from Science of Monsters that is stuck into my head is what inspired Wes Craven to write about Freddy Krueger. And I won't get into all the details, but there was a very high incident of young men among immigrants who had come over from Laos, were dying in their sleep, who had immigrated to America from Laos in the, I want to say, late 70s. And these were young guys, and they couldn't figure out why they were dying in their sleep. And their culture believed that it was a sleep demon. And Wes Craven had read these articles about it. And a lot of sleep demons, for whatever reason, culturally, a lot of them actually have hats that look like Freddy Krueger, which I think is really interesting. And a lot of people who've had sleep demons, sleep paralysis, which I've actually experienced once in my life. Mine did not have a Freddy Krueger hat, but I've had sleep paralysis once in my life where I felt like, there was like somebody in the room and I couldn't move. But they believed, these Laotians believed that there was something called the dacha that was killing these young men in their sleep. But of course it ended up being a scientific heart condition that these men had. But they believed they were being punished for leaving Laos because of, this had to do with the Vietnam War and all these different things. But it was this cultural belief that they held on to. And Wes Craven took that and turned it into Freddy Krueger. And I love little things like that I had no idea. And this is lore, and then it turns into science, which is what was really killing them. And I love these little stories of lore and history and science. And then it turns into a fabulous movie with cheeky Freddy Krueger. And these are the things that my co-author and I get so excited about. And we have so much fun telling people about.
Excellent. All right. So that is all very cool, but I want to know, how does Ganara fly by having fire come out of its four holes where its feet should be, its legs, and how does that allow Ganara to fly through space as well?
Okay, so great question.
Yes, I know.
I'm going to just completely BS this and say that it is the science of I'm going to say that
you need to come to the show prepared.
Stephen King says that the turtle is like basically the universe, right?
Sure, of course.
And so so basically the turtle can do whatever it can do. It has the power of the universe.
So Ganara is not just a radioactive turtle. Ganara is actually the universal noble creature turtle that's carrying the universe. It's just one of its like Green Lanterns or Thor cores. It's basically a galactic police officer, basically. But more. Oh, I like the more.
I think you're even underselling it.
Oh,
I think it's more.
Well, that's why I'm just the host. I mean, that's why I have experts such as yourself. All right.
Yes. Well, you know what? Our next book, I will get a thermodynamic sort of scientists.
I hope that you do. Now, this is similar. What about the science of Godzilla, and especially the new versions of not Godzilla -1, which was fantastic, but the new version of the Warner Brothers Godzilla, where there's this hollow Earth that the Kong lives in, and they can go throughout the Earth and hollow, and apparently there's a hollower Earth too, easily enough. But basically, the science of Godzilla and breathing radioactive acid and spikes and absorbing radiation, getting even bigger and stronger, sort of like the Hulk. The more punishment you take, the stronger you get. I mean, what's the science of that? And while we're at it, what's the science of the Hulk?
Well, good question. So we have not done Godzilla, but we have done a lot of science of we did do a lot of up here in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
We have caves up in, they're actually mines. We have a lot of iron mining, and there are actually a lot of people who go way, way, way deep down in the mine caves here, and they do tests on radioactive stuff that, I know I sound really sciencey, and they do tests.
Well, you just ended it when you said I sound really sciencey.
Well, you know what, I just want everybody to know that I'm very sciencey. So
yep.
Yeah, and they do tests on things that are actually glow in the dark down there. I mean, they go really deep down, and they do tests on gamma rays and all that kind of stuff that Hulk would be into and all that. And so it's fascinating. And also here, I live in southern Minnesota in the land of Mayo Clinic, where they do also a lot of particle testing, because they're trying to figure out how to go.
I thought they just made new kinds of mayonnaise.
Yes, healthy mayonnaise. So
who wants that?
I'll be healthy, of course. Yes,
who wants healthy mayonnaise? What the hell is that?
Only heart healthy here at the Mayo Clinic.
Oh.
But yeah, so there is a lot of that kind of stuff in our books. And when we're talking about, we also do a lot of talking about, killers like Michael Myers, who always seem to get back up again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's no matter how many bullets you put into that man, even though he's not technically supposed to be Michael Myers is just supposed to be a guy, right?
He's fueled just by hate.
Right, but he gets shot and he just keeps getting back up.
Right,
so
mind over matter.
Go into the science of how it would be possible through shock of the body to get a bullet in you and get back up. Of course, this is all supernatural at this point, because Michael Myers would not still actually be alive.
Well, he's not. He sacrificed. He passed on the hate to an acceptable vessel, which of course is supernatural in and of itself.
Things have gotten kind of wacky at this point, but so we get into all sorts of things like that. We have not done an Avengers. We could do a whole Avengers thing with Hulk.
Well, Iron Man, the science of vibranium, the science of adamantium. Yeah. I mean, X-Men mutants, the science of. I mean, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I was gonna give,
Thank you. We could just go forever.
Yeah.
So you're giving great ideas here. So
I'm sure I'm the only one that came up with these. Yeah, I'm sure no one else could have possibly thought of these. What about the science of Superman? All right, so here's the thing with me that doesn't work very much for Superman. Okay, so I get it. In the red sun and their planet, whatever, things are different. So they come here and to the yellow sun, all of a sudden, he's got powers that are beyond. But we see Superman flying all throughout the universe, right? And it's unclear whether he needs to breathe or not breathe. But the point being, he flies around the universe away from our yellow sun and still seems to be super unless he gets to Krypton. Now, this makes no sense to me. If the yellow sun is the source of the power, as soon as he leaves our yellow sun or one that's close enough to it and gets within a vicinity of it, I mean, I assume he's, limited by the what are they called? The heliosphere. As soon as he's limited by the heliosphere or the limits of the solar system or somewhat beyond, you think he'd lose it. Now, I'm even willing to accept that his cells are sort of like batteries, and they hold that power for some period afterwards. But when you're just flying willy-nilly, whatever, I mean, you know, like a Tesla, you think he would need to go to charging stations. He would need to take side detours to other similar yellow stars, or maybe there's other stars that even make him even like super man. But no, he just, it's the, what if he goes into another red star system? I mean, if you were a villain, wouldn't you just like do your villainy from a red star system and go, ha, Superman, do your worst?
You would think so.
Yeah, I mean, I realize I'd make a better villain than hero.
Yeah, I feel like you would make a good villain. I feel like are you somebody who watches a movie and like this is what you're thinking?
Yes.
And then so are you kind of like, are you saying this out loud? Are you ruining the movie for other people?
No. I don't say things out loud unless it's so outrageous that other people probably are also almost usually, or on those rare occasions where I sneak into a movie at like 10 in the morning, like no one else is there, right. Which happens like once every 2 years. And sometimes I don't rip it apart until after I leave the movie. So I'll give you two notable examples: The Eternals and the first Aquaman. While I was watching them, I was aware of like several things that were going on that like I didn't think I liked, but I filed them away and I managed to enjoy the movies for what they were once they were there. The second I got out, I started hating them. And the longer time goes on, the more hate my soul gets filled. Now, granted, every time I get shot, I fall down and I stay down. It's not like Michael Myers hate. But yeah, I am very much like the critical drinker in that phase, and pitch meeting is like my second favorite YouTube thing. My favorite thing is Toonie Town Wrestling because I'm on it. So
I'll be honest, like with the superheroes, I like when our boys were younger, we'd go to all the Marvel everything. But I feel like once the TV shows started, I got so overwhelmed with how many Marvel things there were, I couldn't keep up. Yeah. And I've talked to other people who felt that way too.
Oversaturated, and the quality fell off as well. Now during COVID, you couldn't get enough, but then when they stunk, it's like, I really sort of could get enough.
Yeah, it's just like I just felt overwhelmed, like I couldn't keep up with everything that was happening, and then I just got overwhelmed, and and not everything was great, and I just like, and now I'm way behind.
Well, let me skip to the skip for you. Nothing of value was missed. I mean, it's just all I can tell you is that Marvel is still a little bit better than DC. Like as bad as the Marvels was, and it was bad, Aquaman 2 was like an abomination.
Oh no. Okay.
And the Marvels had a singing segment in it. So it went all musical somewhere in the middle there. And still Aquaman 2 managed to be worse. So anyway.
I haven't seen either. Okay.
Well, you know what? You probably should keep that streak alive. Keep that streak alive. All right, so let's go back into, are there any of the monsters that, I mean, I'm not sure if you explored like things like werewolves and vampires and, ghosts and stuff like that. So let's get into the basics of that, because I feel like, I've been having a lot of fun, but I think I've been having too much fun sort of chiming in and not letting you expose. I mean,
well, you're definitely, you're testing my monster knowledge. You're definitely going out into monsters that like we haven't even like explored, and it's kind of funny because it feels like we're always, now that we've done Science of Monsters, Science of Women in Horror, Science of Stephen King, Science of Serial Killers, Science of Witches, Science of Agatha Christie, Science of Alfred Hitchcock. We're always like, oh, what's next? Like, what could we possibly do? But you know what? You've proven to me we definitely have more that we can do.
Oh, there's unending supply of monsters. I mean,
definitely. You're making me like face the fact that there's more. But yeah, no. I think for me that like I said, I'm such a history nerd, and it's funny because like growing up I used to think like, oh, I don't like history because I don't like I've never found like military history interesting. Like my dad was always reading about, you know, World War II, like all dads. And and I never found that interesting. So I just thought, well, I don't like history. But then I realized it was just because I like different history. I like obviously history that is interesting to the female experience, and I like literary history and film history, and so reading about, you know, for instance, when we got into vampires and we learn about different cultures who really, really believe that vampires are real, and you know, and when we were working on our book, The Science of Witchcraft, and obviously when you're working on something like witchcraft, you're working on something where you're talking about media and the history of witchcraft in media, but you're also talking about the history and science of people actually believing in witchcraft. And there was one particular incident, and I think the first time I saw anything about it was when the podcast Lore, they did their television show, and they did an episode on it, and it was about, I believe her name was Mercy Brown, and it was about how this community in the northeast
Massachusetts colony.
Yeah, they believed that, you know, because she had, I think, tuberculosis, they believed that she had given her family vampirism, basically, and so they ended up exhuming her, and they believed that if her brother ate her heart, that he wasn't going to be a vampire anymore. And I mean, we're talking about people, this was like early 1900s, late 1800s. This is not like that long ago, really, in the scheme of things. And so when you think about the
Oh, so it's not the Massachusetts colony, it's just plain old Massachusetts at that point.
Yeah, this is not like witchcraft time. This is not Salem, Massachusetts, like 1690s. This is
because Mercy Brown was a character. I mean, I realize she's a real person, but in a show, was it a Discovery of Witches? It was one of the shows. It's like on AMC or A&E, something like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But that's the only, you know. But every time I hear witches, I go straight to Cotton Mather's world and, you know, Salem.
Yeah. Yeah, this particular incident was kind of more vampiric, but I just love stories like that. I love sort of well, you know, I was talking about Shirley Jackson and the lottery, and I love this idea of sort of a rural town or a group of people, kind of their minds kind of thinking, yeah, we're just gonna like get this body, and we're going to, this kid's gonna eat this heart, and then he won't be a vampire anymore.
Sure, of course.
And like it just makes so much sense to them. It's like this strange sort of not Stockholm syndrome, not brainwashing, but it's like this sort of group think. And those are the kinds of things, like The Shining, we talk about in our book. I think it's The Science of Monsters. They all start to mesh together after a while. And we talk about cabin fever. You know, can cabin fever actually cause you to murder someone? And one of my favorite stories is about these guys out in Antarctica. And I'm sorry, is my pug snoring really loud? Can you hear that on the...
No, but good try at blaming on the dog.
My pug is snoring so loud next to me. Anyway, one of my favorite stories is these two guys out in Antarctica. They're, you know, imagine they are there on like a science expedition. This is real. They have basically nothing to do. They're stuck there all the time. And these are Russian guys. And one of them messes with the other one, and he tells him the ending of one of the books. He's just a jerk. And he tells him the twist at the end of one of the books that they have there.
Right.
The other guy gets so mad at him, he stabs him. And they end up having to, like, send a helicopter in and get this guy. Now, I think we can all understand, like, certainly who've been through the pandemic, like, or something like that, like, how mad you'd be if that's all you have to live for, basically, and your twist has been ruined. And so I laughed. The guy was okay. He was okay. I think he stabbed him in the leg or something. He's okay.
Oh, well, okay.
And basically, science proves that cabin fever is not enough to kill somebody. And obviously, in The Shining, there were more elements, but we had to go with science here. But I think we can all understand and relate to how dire things can get and how small your life can be in small situations. So I love these little scientific things that come up, and how when we're in a situation like that and all we have is a book, and if somebody is a jerk and tells you the twist ending, how it could get to the point where you would stab somebody.
Well, isolation horror is fantastic. Alien, Jaws is even, Outland, which is not exactly a horror movie, but where The Thing, where you're alone. I mean, if imagine, that's why astronauts have so much testing done for their mental acuity as well as their physical acuity. It's pretty hard to be well enough across all boards and smart enough to be an astronaut, because you're going to be in that space station with, 3 or 4 other people for months, maybe a year in some cases, and you're not going to like them, and they're going to, fart occasionally in a public space because it's all a public space, and
Right.
And then you have to not go off the handle and stab somebody with the Swiss Army knife while you're up there.
Right?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite, like, setups, and that's, like, in our book Agatha Christie, which is kind of, we kind of call it, like, horror adjacent, because she's people, obviously she's more mystery,
Sure,
but she throws a lot of strangers together, and I think that's just one of the best setups of horror. And obviously The Shining isn't strangers, but
yeah, but the difference between a mystery and horror simply is the pacing at times.
Right. Exactly. Yep. And also we argue with Agatha Christie. She's a lot more horror than people realize, but I love the setup of strangers stuck together in a situation. And again, there's that sink or swim, right? Like, your real personality comes out. But I think we could all argue being stuck in a situation with your family could also be even worse.
Well, familiarity breeds contempt, and there's no escape for sure. But I mean, and now you add the mystery box. Now you have the, basically the formula of Lost. It's isolation with strangers, and all sorts of wackadoodle things happening that don't make any sense while you're trying to deal with it with strangers, and you're completely isolated. I think Under the Dome, Stephen King explored that, with the whole community. So yeah, it's definitely I have a question, and it has nothing to do with what we're talking. Well, I mean, it does, but not directly. Have you ever read or heard of the book The Descent by Jeff Long?
The book The Descent?
No, not the movie. Don't forget about the movie.
I love the movie, but no, I have not read it.
Okay, I beg you to read it, because it's my favorite horror book, or science fiction book, because it's really both. But and then when you do, and if you love it too, let me know. Yes, I've been dying to.
I will. By Jeff who?
Long, Long, just the way it sounds. He also has a book called Year Zero, which is a good book, but there's a great book in there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I will totally check it out. Okay.
But if you do, if you agree, I want you to come back with me, because I've been trying to do a show on The Descent forever, and I can't. And I can't get Jeff Long, because he's a curmudgeon and doesn't want to talk to anybody. He's like really gone into the mountains, become a hermit. Maybe he's Merlin. I don't know. Anyway, enough about that. So let's get back into Agatha, because I never really thought of Agatha Christie as horror or science-y, though of course every great detective to a certain extent uses science, the power of observation, but missing absolutely nothing and knowing trajectories and physics and, Sherlock Holmes and knows everything basically. So tell us a little bit about the science of Agatha Christie.
Yeah, well, what's kind of cool about Agatha Christie is that her science is actually pretty spot on. One reason is because during World War I, she volunteered as a pharmacist, and that's where she got all her information. So she uses poison a lot, as we know. It's kind of a polite way to kill people, and her poison is very spot on. When you do the research, you find out that her doses are right. Her symptoms of the way people show how they're about to die are right. She knows what she's talking about. She's got a funny story in her. She wrote 2 biographies, and she's got a funny story about how she actually caught a pharmacist was making suppositories, and she caught him making a bad batch that was going to basically poison people. And she didn't want, this was in the era where you couldn't, she couldn't tell a man that he was doing something wrong. So she accidentally, quote unquote, she took the suppositories out of his hand and she tripped, and she spilled them all over the floor and made him redo the batch because she realized that he had basically messed it up and she didn't want him to hurt anybody. So she knew her medications, and it was something that she was able to use.
Arsenic and old lace.
Yeah, so she knew what she was talking about. So that was really cool. And unfortunately, as a fiction writer, a horror fiction writer, DNA and all that kind of stuff has kind of taken some of the fun out of all this stuff. And so she got to write in an era where there was no DNA and all that stuff, and so it was like, you mentioned Sherlock Holmes, so like Poirot and Miss Marple, they had to use other cool, interesting deduction sort of stuff like Sherlock Holmes, and so we get into a lot of that stuff. We also get into DNA and things like that. We actually Poirot, in one of the books that we discuss, he has to go into a cold case, which, if you can imagine, at that time it was very hard to work a cold case. And we interviewed somebody from the Innocence Project for that book, which was very interesting. So that was very cool. And in one book, we interviewed Len Grossman, who was kind of like the original Survivor Man before Bear Grylls.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember that show. It was better. I mean, they were different. It was more authentic.
Yeah.
It was more authentic.
Yeah, so we got to talk to him, and because one of the books, somebody is out, basically surviving in the winter. And he gave us some tips on if we have to do that. We do live in Minnesota, so we had to, get some advice from him if ever we get lost. And so yeah, we kind of just, what we like to do when we read these books or watch these films is we like to sort of take out these little tidbits and kind of explore things that aren't necessarily always the obvious thing, but are kind of a fun, different approach. And also with the Stephen King book and the Agatha Christie book, we also like to add in a little biography too. And there's obviously, for Agatha Christie, there's the science of, she learned and basically taught herself archaeology because her husband was an archaeologist, and she, her second husband, and so she went along with him and, basically learned by watching. And she was a tough, independent woman, and she figured it out, and she actually started teaching people. And she didn't have any formal training, but she went to the Middle East and Egypt, and was out there doing it herself, and actually contributed to finding artifacts, and she lived a really interesting, fascinating life. So that's a pretty cool thing to learn about too. So it's a book that I think if anyone is interested in learning about kind of, I like to say, like, for the Stephen King book and the Agatha Christie book, if you've never read them, it's a great entry point to sort of learn along with reading their books, because we do chapter by chapter is a book they've written, and some people like to read the book and then read the chapter that we've written along with it. And some people who are diehards and they've read all the books, they love to just go in and read the chapters and learn more. So it's for diehards, but it's also for people who, I've met some young people who've never heard of Agatha Christie, and it's kind of an honor to bring, somebody into the fold who's never heard of her before too.
Yeah, in Stephen King, I mean, there's some obvious things. Firestarter, basically mutants, basically the same as X-Men. Carrie, the same. Especially tied to coming of age. And being basically bullied and then exploding. So Carrie is basically the ancestor of Ginger Snaps, which I think is a fabulous werewolf movie.
Yes.
Firestarter, basically the same thing except a child, so of course, completely unrestrained because children barely know any boundaries, and because that's when they learn boundaries, and it's basically like a 4-year-old Drew Barrymore. So, of course, then you have sort of like his, a lot of ghosts and spirits, things that, inhabit things like dogs and animals and cars and then trucks, which is basically the same thing. But then you have interdimensionality and basically quantum theory and string theory, before there was such a thing. And basically everything that involves the Wheel of Ka, whether you're talking about the Stand or the Dark Tower and all that. So, some of my questions seem more like speeches. I feel like this is one of them, but I think I gave you enough of a prodding to sort of address those things. Also because Stephen King is just so popular.
Yeah. Well, yes. So, a lot, I will say so many people have said, well, but why didn't you talk about this book? Well, why didn't you talk about that book? And it's like, well, listen. We could write 3 more books on Stephen King books. He's obviously written so many books. We could only cover however many books. So first of all, yes, we could go on and on for a million years. So we obviously had to choose.
What's the science of going on for a million years? Is that possible?
Yeah, really.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, really. It's we could definitely do a volume 2 of the Stephen King book, I'm sure. But we wanted to choose, when we attack a book like that, we wanted to choose obviously the greatest hits, but we also want to choose books that matter to us. For instance, I chose Lisey's story, which is not necessarily one of his most famous and well received books, but it's a book that really resonated with me. And so I wanted to talk about it, and we actually we interviewed a grief counselor for that chapter, and the science of grief, what it does to the body and what it does to the mind. But when it comes to his bigger concepts like Ka and interdimensionality, we actually did talk to a scientist about string theory, about interdimensionality. We did it as as reader friendly and as approachable as we could. We don't want to get too much into the weeds because we want our books to be as reader friendly and as like, we still want to be talking about Stephen King and we still want to be talking about horror, and we don't want to go so far out into like theories that we kind of like get so far out into space that we kind of like forgot where we were going. So we tried to rein it in as much as we could while like still learning. So yeah, there's so much to discuss. And also like one of my favorite things, and kind of what I was talking about with Agatha Christie, one of my favorite things about the Stephen King book is that he's been so honest and authentic about his life journey that as you go through our book, you see the connection of where he is in his life and how that connects to what he's writing and who he is as a man in that moment. And that's something like when I studied literature and today, even like that's just something I love as a reader. I'm always interested in sort of who the author is and how that resonates in their book. And I know when I got to The Dark Half, and that is the time when he got sober, and he was obviously struggling with being sober, and he wrote about not only was he becoming sober in that moment, but he also had a man who had figured out a man was trying to basically kind of nicely, but not so nicely blackmail him because he had figured out that he was Richard Bachman. He had basically done his research, and he had figured out that Stephen King and Richard Bachman were the same person. And so Stephen King was like, well, okay, yeah, I gotta basically say yeah. And this guy's kind of figured me out, so I'm just gonna like admit it. And so The Dark Half was basically him admitting that he was like these two people, but it also had to do with like his sobriety and like, I'm this like dad, but I'm also this like dark person as well. And so I love this sort of like this horror story, but it's also the story of Stephen King. And it really culminates in that book. And again, it's not one of his more famous books. No, people don't talk about it that much. It's not like a top 10 Stephen King book or anything. But for me, writing that chapter about that book, and of course we get into the science of like twins and absorbing their twin and all that really interesting stuff. But the actual connection of the biography to the writing just really was fascinating to me. So those are the things that I really dig deep into and find interesting. And yeah, and I love all the science stuff too, but that's what I really think is cool and makes for, I think, an in-depth look at what makes Stephen King tick and why we as a reading public love him so much. I think it's that authenticity of him being able to be like, this is who I am at this moment, and I'm so far from perfect.
I think you're right. And yeah, his struggles were made public later, but not at the time. But did you notice any real change in his style of writing from before to after?
Well, I do know something that I will say is that something that I appreciate that he has done, that my co-author and I, when we wrote our Agatha Christie book and our Alfred Hitchcock book, is that we've had to be very honest that they are very problematic people. And with with Stephen King, he obviously has problematic stuff in his books, and he has made an effort to be better about that. And so I do appreciate that, that he's made an effort to, like, obviously he can't change what he's written in the past, but he's made an effort to be more inclusive, use less language that he would have used in the past, things like that. As far as writing style and things like that, I mean, yeah, I think that he's changed. I know, like, for instance, he said, like, he doesn't remember writing Cujo because he was so,
Right, got it.
hopped up. So, I mean, yeah, I think he's in his 70s. I think he's changed the way he writes. I still enjoy his writing. Do I think it's the exact same that he used to write? No. Do I think that sometimes people are afraid to tell him to cut some stuff out because he's Stephen King and are afraid to tell him he could probably edit some stuff out and, like, he doesn't need his books to be 700 pages? Yes. Sometimes, yes.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Also, I mean, I do and I don't like dimensions. So, so this is part of me. So, like, I think one of the worst things that Marvel has done is added the multiverse to it. I know that it worked in some of the Spider-Man movies. I think they should have limited maybe it to that, because they've added multi-dimensions, then they added multiple timelines, and then they added whatever the heck was the end of the Marvels, where it was a reality is entering into our reality. And is that a dimension? Is that time? I mean, what the hell is that? I mean, so whatever that is, it serves some purposes. It allows Venom to be both in the Sony and the Marvel universe. Yay, I guess. But nobody dies. There's no consequences. Everybody can come back, and it's just too much. I would rather, and it's an excuse. It's laziness. But going back to Stephen King, because that's what we're talking about now, I didn't so much love that, like in The Stand, where you had you would go from Kansas and then you'd go into the Wizard of Oz world. I also really didn't like it in the beginning in the second book of The Dark Tower, where my hero, the hero Roland Deschain, like, loses 3 fingers on his shooting hand, like, and I get that that was important for the plot device, but I sort of hated that. My favorite book in the Dark Tower series was the 4th one, The Wolves of Kaya, which was all history and or the history of that world. But that was the one that I felt like was an actual book that, like, the style that I enjoyed writing. It was like the least Stephen King book and more like the most, like, George R.R. Martin book, of them. Yeah. So what's your feelings on interdimensionality, and not your feelings, but the science of interdimensionality in horror?
Oh, wow. Well, one could definitely argue that that's like a sci-fi, and then that's like a sci-fi horror. I know, like, for me, it's, I personally love it because I think that I love the device, first of all, because what I love about horror is that it pushes the boundaries and it makes you think, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's the whole point of, like, storytelling, and that's what Mary Shelley was trying to do, right, when she made, basically created the modern horror genre. Mm-hmm. When we play around with, I even, my husband and I took our 13-year-old, he wanted to see Civil War. We went and saw Civil War on Friday.
How was it?
It was really well done. It's not necessarily like my kind of thing, but it was very well done, and it was very thought-provoking.
Actually, this is probably a good time to tell people, because these shows are evergreen. This is April 14th, 2024. So just talking about the new A24 movie, Civil War, not Captain America's Civil War or any other Civil War movie you might be seeing. Yeah. No, it's fine. It's good for me to do that.
Yeah, the A24 Civil War. And and so it was really thought-provoking, and it was like, it's like an alternate history, right?
Right. Or is it?
Yeah, or is it, right? It's a little too close to home.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think anytime there's something like that that is thought-provoking like that, and it felt like at one point I'm like, oh yeah, this is a horror movie, right? And again, you can sort of, that's kind of what's great about horror, is it's so much more than slasher, which is like what I spend most of my career convincing people is like, oh wait, no, horror is not just a slasher.
Right. It's frankly, slasher are the least good of those movies, if that's the right use of two words together. But I mean, there are some that are good, and there are some that are obviously iconic. You know, Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, there are iconic movies that have led to, you know, ridiculously popular franchises. But to me, Predator is a much better horror movie than any of those are. Alien is a better horror movie than, I mean, listen, Friday the 13th, the first one, is fantastic, and because it was new at the time. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a good slasher. I just saw Thanksgiving, which is a great slasher movie. I just saw another one. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. It's not important. There are great slasher movies. Oh, speaking of a slasher movie that's science, Pearl, not an orphan with the little girl that's not a little girl. She's actually like 40 years old. It's just she never, you know, ages past 10. I mean, is that real? Is that a real condition?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, isn't that? I mean, so yeah, that's great science. And but yeah, I feel like most of my career, most of my interviews are me going like, at me convincing people like horror doesn't have to just be a slasher.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was talking about interdimensionality.
Yes.
My point being is that like Stephen King uses it to great effect, I think, and it really, people, again, that's another great thing that Stephen King does. And I know when I'm reading a Stephen King book and he will kind of play with the dimensions like that. Everybody loves it. It's those great Easter eggs, and you're like, but you know, sometimes it's not used to great effect. But I think that it is a great way to, horror holds up a mirror to us. That, again, I was bringing up Mary Shelley for a reason, because good horror, I think about the Jordan Peele movies. Us is one of my favorite movies of recent years, and that movie put up such a great mirror to what's happening. And I think that horror, there are trends in horror, and Get Out is another great example of putting a mirror up. And interdimensionality can actually do a great job of putting up that mirror. And I know I'm talking more in a social construct rather than a science construct.
Okay, you are the guest on a podcast. You are allowed to talk about whatever you want.
But I think that by using those tropes, horror can show us, you know, what we're doing to the earth, or what we're doing to races on Earth, or what we're doing with our technology on Earth, or etc. You know, that is a power that horror has that not all other genres necessarily can do so well.
Yeah, arguably King Kong and Mighty Joe Young and the original Godzilla, those were some of the first environmental movies.
Exactly. So I think it's done with great effect. Now, and you know, a great example of that was, again, Jordan Peele's newer Twilight Zone did that well with those that trope of interdimensionality. The old Twilight Zone did that as well.
Oh, yeah.
But scientifically, we had a great, actually, my co-author's friend is an actual rocket scientist, and she actually was kind enough to bring her big brain and come on and talk about, you know, the string theory and the actual theories of like dimensions, and like the concept of that we actually are, that there are dimensions, you know, is that possible? And of course, like this idea of I think it's this human nature. I mean, this is why we as humans like have religions and have not to get really deep here, but like this is why we construct that this is why we love the idea of aliens and all these other things. Like we want to believe, like Fox Mulder, like we want to believe that there's something else out there, right? So I think that
you want monsters, read the Bible.
Right.
There's a ton of monsters in there. You got bad angels that come down and then take women. You've got the Nephilim. You've got giants. You've got descendants of giants. You have Behemoth. You have Leviathan. Right. You've got somewhere in there. There's a 7-headed dragon with 10 crowns or something like that. That's red. I mean, you want monsters.
It's human nature.
Yeah, they're
human nature.
They're all there. It's all right there. You got Lazarus. Tell me that's not a vampire.
Right. I mean, exactly. Like, this goes back when we're doing our research and we're going into lore and cultural, all that stuff. And we're going back into all that when we're tapping into, science. Because a lot of times people, before they can explain, porphyria, which is a condition that people thought were vampires, but it was people were, they couldn't handle being on sunlight because they had porphyria.
Mm-hmm.
They were attributing it to all sorts of things, whether it be biblical or whatever. And so this is human nature. We create monsters. And so this idea that there's another dimension and you can step into it, that's just one more human nature idea. And the idea that there's scientific things we don't understand, like, that is true. There are things, just like ghosts, we can laugh at the idea of ghosts. It's very easy to be skeptical about it. But it is true we don't understand. There are things that we still don't understand. So I'm old enough to know that there's things I don't know and I don't understand. But yeah, it's human nature. And I'm old enough to know that I need to bring in people and interview them and say, please explain this to me with your knowledge and expertise. Like, we've talked to so many people, and I have still so much to learn. So that's kind of my favorite part about our book series, is just bringing in all these interesting, fascinating people. We bring in filmmakers. We've had a anonymous FBI agent who, like, interviewed Jeffrey Dahmer. We've had like actors. We've had everybody. So it's been really fascinating, and you get all sorts of different perspectives. And yeah, at the end of the day, we all like this stuff. Even the people who say they don't like horror, I'm always, it's interesting because I'm in the business and I'll say, oh, I write horror, and it's interesting because horror is that one thing people go, oh, I don't like that. I don't like that. Ew. And
well, it's not just that. There's people who say they don't like westerns or samurai movies, but they love Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like with horror, it's like, okay, but then they'll go home and they'll like watch like a true crime Dateline or something, and they're like, okay, so you'll watch it about like a real thing, but okay.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I understand. All right. I have a theory. It's horror adjacent.
Okay.
The Matrix, to me, science fiction, dystopian. What's the other term for like exposition fiction? That's not the right word. I can't think of it. But speculative fiction. It's all of that, but it's also to me a bit of a horror movie. Now, here's my theory: The Matrix is the only Matrix movie. All the rest of them, I don't know what they are. We're going to set them aside. There are, in fact, 4 sequels to The Matrix, and they are the John Wick movies. And it is Neo sleeping in his little containment unit where he's battery juice, brain energy, and he's dreaming that he's an assassin, which is why everything's like a video game and it's always raining and dark and nobody has guns from far away and everyone's, and there's always only 2 guys with samurai swords on motorcycles waiting as opposed to 9,000 of them. I mean, and why no injury really lasts forever and there's always a final boss. I mean, because it's basically he's imagining video games and constructing this entire world. in his head and will forever and ever, and they keep getting bigger in this hall of mirrors because that's his dream, his fantasy, and that's what's fueling the world through him. So now that, I think, in itself could be a horror movie that at some point Neo realizes he's not John Wick and that he's actually Neo sleeping in the Matrix, and they could bring it back to the original Matrix. You're welcome, Hollywood.
We gotta get you into a pitch meeting.
Damn right you do. Listen, I don't have a lot of good original ideas. I really don't. I'm not trying to put myself down. That's like one of my few ones, but I'm an excellent collaborator. Like, if people have ideas, I can make them better, more interesting. Yeah.
That's great. That's great that you know that about yourself.
Yeah. No,
that's really good.
Well, I'm a member of AARP. I should know myself by now.
I like that. Yeah. I mean, I think by the time we're at ARP, we should have a pretty good idea of who we are.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's like that old Motown song, If You Don't Know Me by... Well, exactly. Well, whenever I get into a singing thing and the guest joins me in singing, that's probably a good time to ask the guest to, if there's anything I didn't ask and they didn't get a chance to talk about they really want to. This is sort of like the most open-ended question ever, but is there anything that we didn't get to that you would absolutely like to convey?
Okay, well, I just want to plug...
Oh, you can plug everything.
Okay, so August 27th, my best friend and I have a book coming out called Travels of Terror, and it's our first travel book, and we went around the U.S., and we went to scary places, and so that is coming out. And then in October, I think, is The Signs of Alfred Hitchcock. And yeah, that's all I want to plug.
Okay, very good. Well, tell the folks where they can find all of your stuff. Where can they buy your books, and where can they hear your podcast and all that other good stuff?
My podcast, Horror Rewind, is basically everywhere, Spotify, wherever you can find podcasts. And my books are, at the typical Amazon, and all the places you can find books, although I encourage you to ask your local independent bookstore to order them. And you can find me at meghafdahl.com. I'm also on Instagram, Meg Hafdahl, and Facebook, Meg Hafdahl.
Excellent. All right. Well, that is perfect. Thank you for all of this. Endlessly fascinating. I do hope you enjoyed The Descent so that we can talk about that and break that down, because it does answer every single question about everything that goes bump in the night without having to go into extra dimensions and time travel and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. It was actually written pretty well. It's one of those books you have to pay attention to, but the audience is like, Jeff, stop talking about The Descent. I have a few things that make their way into every single goddamn show, and it's The Descent, Nephilim, Anunnaki, and Lilith. I just got Anunnaki and Lilith in, so screw you, haters. But
all right, I'm gonna have to check out The Descent. I'm very excited.
Right.
I love a good book recommendation.
But don't think that I'm not going to have more questions about the signs of Godzilla, Ganer, and maybe.
Okay, I'm gonna do some studying.
And maybe like Titans generally, like, whether it's the Godzilla universe of Titans or whether it's the Cthulhu universe of Titans, because they're sort of the same thing. I mean, really, at the end of it, which is, by the way, one of the things I hate about the Eternals. The Celestials are basically supposed to be the Titans, except around the universe. But let me just express the thing. I mean, there's so many things to hate about that movie. But one, the Celestial is born out of the egg of the core of the Earth and breaches the ocean. It doesn't even need to breach the ocean, breaks the core of the Earth. The fact that somebody transmutes it into some type of stone or cement does not change the fact that they've broken the core of the Earth.
Oh boy.
I mean,
see, this is what you should have been there collaborating on this script.
I don't want anywhere near that script. I should have been. You don't really know me, but that movie was really made for me because it was a superhero movie with basically the tale of the Watchers. I mean, basically it's the Watchers coming down and, giving them a little kinder, gentler face, but really a lazier, stupider, and less interesting face. And
so you were like the target audience, and they didn't get to you. I mean,
every
they messed up.
every part of me, it was the Anunnaki, it was the star heroes, it was the Olympians, it was the Watchers, it was everything in a superhero movie. It was everything for me, and they ruined every single part of it.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I mean, they didn't even get Selma Hayek being like super hot right.
Oh, well then they really messed it up.
I know. I mean, she's still beautiful, but it's like, I mean, they have like a woman who my entire life has been age appropriately super hot, and made her just like, yeah, okay.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
You really dropped the ball. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, even Star Wars didn't mess that up with Halle Berry or whatever she was. I think it was a John Wick movie, actually. No, listen, I don't even know. I'm confused at this point.
I don't know. But
it doesn't matter.
I'm so sorry.
I know. Anyway, Meg Hafdahl, thank you very much for joining us on Garden of Doom. I hope this was a pleasant enough experience.
It was. I'll come back anytime. I'll read that book and do my homework on Godzilla.
All right, the ball's in your end, Ganara. Do not give short shrift to Ganara. Though I have to tell you, you probably don't even know who Ganara is, but you did a good job getting to that.
All right, thank you.
All righty, thanks a lot. Okay, folks, thanks very much. Check out her stuff, buy her stuff, and if you buy it on Amazon, I'm sure she'd really appreciate a nice review and a 5-star rating, because that's very important. And as I always say, so would I on this little podcast. Give me 5-star reviews and give me a nice rating. But I would appreciate this, and I'm sure Meg would, as would all of our guests, to refer our product, this show, her books, her podcast, to your friends, because nothing counts more than that. So with that, thank you very much. You may hear from me midweek with Garden Views. You will definitely hear from me early in the week with the Lip Men on the UFL. Yes, the United Football League, it's still going. And at this moment in time, forget about week 1 where I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I've been 6-0 since then with my predictions. And next week you'll definitely hear from us in the Garden of Doom. See ya.